Greetings everyone. Today we're going to explore solving systems with elimination. But this video is very specific in that all the systems are going to be lined up and all of our answers are going to be a single solution. If you are looking for a more generic video with more options, please see my YouTube playlist. Or if you are looking for something specific, make sure you've got the right notes in front of you. Let's get started. So far in this unit, we have solved systems by graphing, and that worked really nice when we got a perfect point. But perfect numbers aren't always the case in the real world. So then we solved by substitution. But with substitution, I always made sure that you could isolate a variable cleanly. And guess what? That's not always going to happen. And so now our goal is to work with elimination. What if I can't graph perfectly? What if I can't isolate a variable nicely without a bunch of fractions? Then I have elimination. Let's talk about the basics of eliminating. You already know how to eliminate. For example, if I asked you, how would you eliminate the number 7? You would say -7, right? If I combine those, they're eliminated. Or if I said, how do you eliminate -15? You would add 15. So the key thing here that I'm pointing out before we get going is that if we want something to eliminate, we need to make sure they somehow have opposite signs, and we need to make sure that they are the same number. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say I have the numbers 3 and the number 9. Those won't eliminate, right? But if I take this 3 times -3, that gets me -9. -9 and 9 would cancel. And so do you see what I did there? I strategically chose a number that would get me to the other number with multiplication, and I made it the opposite sign by giving it a negative. So we are going to use multiplication to make a number eliminate. Let's take a look at our first example in our notes. Again, very specific. Make sure you're on the correct notes. First of all, I am telling you that in this lesson, everything's going to be lined up. That means the x's are lined up, the y's are lined up, the equals are lined up, and the regular numbers are lined up. Okay? That's not always going to be the case. Now that everything's lined up, let's look at our letters. Look at those x's. See how I have a -1x and a +1x? That's going to eliminate because they already have the same number and they already have opposite signs. Everything is set up in this first example, and we're going to do what I like to call, this is a Mortvet thing, old school addition. We're going to draw a line with a big old plus sign. You remember in elementary school, if I asked you 129 plus 37, you lined up the ones, you had to have those lined up. You lined up the tens, you lined up the hundreds, and then you did old school addition, right? Where you added vertically. Remember doing that? So that's what we're doing. We're doing old school addition. We're lining up everything and we're adding. -1x plus 1x is 0. That's the elimination step right there. Let's keep going. +1y plus +1y is +2y. Equal signs fall down, just like always. 7 plus 1 is 8. That's the new stuff. That's what's new. From here on out, you guys, this is old news. You already know how to solve these mini equations. So let's see. Instead of times 2, let's divide by 2 to the other side. That gets me y equals 4. Let's prep our answer as we've been doing for the last month. My y value is 4. I need to find my x value. Well, pick an equation. Do you want the first one or the second one? It doesn't matter. I'm going to pick the second one. Right? This is what we have. Now, instead of y, I'm going to change y to 4 because that's what it is. So if I change y to 4, that means I have x plus 4 equals 1. Now notice I got rid of the 1's because that doesn't change anything. Let's solve for x. Instead of positive 4, let's minus 4. X equals negative 3. X is negative 3. All right, let's take a look at the next example. First of all, and in this lesson specifically, we're all lined up. Next, we want to think about what letter we want to eliminate. Well, look at those Y's. That's a lot going on there. So if I have the choice, I'm going to pick X's because they look easier. Currently, we have a 1x and a 1x. They're the same number, but they're not opposite signs. It's almost like if I had a checklist, right? I need the same number and I need opposite signs, okay? And if I had little check boxes here, I would say, yep, same number, but they're not opposite signs. I need to make them opposite signs. So to do that, I'm going to multiply an equation by negative 1. Watch what happens when I do that. If I multiply, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my pen here. Let's try that again. If I multiply by negative 1, either equation, you can pick. I would get a negative 1x, a negative 14y, and a negative 12. Do you see how I just distributed that to everything? Okay, let's rewrite the first equation. The first one, I didn't do anything with that. Take a look. My equations are lined up. They now have the same number and opposite signs. We are ready to do what I like to call old school addition. Negative 1x plus 1x cancels. That needs to happen in order for this to work. Negative 14y, negative 10y, negative 24y. Negative 12 plus 60, 48. That's the only new stuff today. From here on out, we are just solving equations. We're going to divide both sides by negative 24. That gets me y equals negative 2. Let's prep our answer. Now that I have half the answer, I need to find the other half. You get to pick which equation. Do you want to use top or bottom? I'm going to use bottom just because the number's smaller. 12 is smaller than 60. But other than that, I don't have much of a strategy here. So I'm going to rewrite the bottom equation. But where there's a y, I'm going to put a negative 2. You see how I replaced y with negative 2? Let's solve. 14 times negative 2 is negative 28. I want to kick 28 to the other side, so I'm going to add 28. That gets me x equals 40, which seems really big, but it's still a clean number, which I'm going to try to stick to, and it worked out perfectly. Let's take a look at example 3. Step 1, make sure they're all lined up. Looks good. X's, Y's equals numbers. Next, we want to choose a letter to eliminate. Think of it as a little checklist. I need the same number, and I need opposite signs. Well, both letters have the same number. They both have 1's, right? But let's take a look for opposite signs. The Y's are both negative. The X's are opposite signs. So let's choose to eliminate the X's. So we're going to draw a line and do some old school addition. X plus negative x, it goes away. Be careful here. This is negative 1y plus negative 1y, negative 2y. Then we have negative 8 plus 0. We've got a little equation to solve. We're done with the new stuff. Let's divide both sides by negative 2 to get a nice, clean y value of 4. Now I know one of the answers, so I need to find the other answer. You can pick top equation or bottom equation. I'm going to pick the top one just to change it up. That means instead of y, I'm replacing y with a 4. See how I replaced y with 4? That means all I need to do to kick it to the other side is add 4. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4. Now for this last example, if you would please put a big star by this one. This one's going to require some more thought. It's got a special rule that's happening, so I wanted to make sure you have an example to reference. First of all, we need to make sure everything's lined up. 2's are good, y's are good, equals numbers. We're lined up. Next, we want to choose a variable to eliminate. Well, look at the x's. Does 2 fit into 7? Not really, right? Does 4 fit into 3? No. There's not an easy multiplication fix here, okay? So if I think of that little checklist, I need to make the same number and I need to make sure they have opposite signs. And I don't have either, right? So here's the strategy, and technically you can use this strategy always. You're going to pick a letter. I'm just going to pick x's because they're first. You are going to multiply by the opposite number, meaning I'm going to multiply the first equation by 7 and the second equation by 2. Do you see how I use the opposite? That will always make it the same number. But now I need to talk about opposite signs. 7 times 2 is 14 and 2 times 7 is 14. They're not opposite signs. So in this particular example, I also need to make one of them negative. You pick, it doesn't matter which one. So let's rewrite our problem here. We're going to distribute negative 7 to all of that. That gets us negative 14x, negative 28y, and 40 times 7, big number, but that's okay. Just roll with it. It's not a big deal. We've got negative 280. All right, let's distribute again. We're going to take everything times 2 on the bottom equation. That gets me 14x, negative 6y, and positive 8. All right, we just totally rewrote the problem. Let's check it out. Do we have the same numbers now? Yup. Do they have opposite signs? Yup. Now I'm ready to continue. Let's do some old school addition. Negative 14x plus 14x cancels. Perfect. Negative 28y and negative 6y is negative 34y. Negative 280 plus 8 is negative 272. Big numbers, but let's just keep walking through this. We've got an equation to solve. We're going to divide both sides by negative 34. So you definitely want a calculator. And if I divide by 34, I have to use my calculator for that. We arrive at positive 8. Now in my class, I will make sure that you have clean integer answers. You could have fractions in the real world or in other math classes. All right, I did all that work and all I found was y. We need to do a little bit more work to find x. Pick an equation. You want to use top or bottom? Bottom has a 4 instead of a 40, so let's do that one. I'm going to keep 7x, but instead of y, I'm going to replace y with 8. Let's solve our equation. 3 times 8 is 24. We're going to add 24 to the other side. That gets me a 28. We're going to divide both sides by 7, and I get a nice, clean 4. Perfect. Our solution is 4, 8. I just want to reiterate before we're done here Remember that strategy here. We multiplied by the opposite number and we checked our signs to see if they would work. Alrighty, this was the first step and introduction into elimination. Again, I have many videos about elimination, so check those out. So just make sure to always check out Google Classroom to see what the task is to go with this video. If you have other questions, see my other videos on YouTube. Let me know if you have any questions, and until next time, have a good one.